Welcome back to the Brew Bowl and the all-important Round 7 summary. As we go into the final round of the competition, let's get straight into seeing how things are looking. Alright, so let's have first off a look at the leaderboard currently. So we have the End of All Air Kodiaks remain in first place on 16 points. We've had some movements all over the table other than that. So other than our two bottom teams, the Death Brew Revengers and the Fungus Bay Fanatics, the rest of the teams all had some substantial moves, especially around the middle of the pack, where everyone was so contested because of the sheer number of draws this season. Rather than going straight into the teams, I want to quickly talk about the Round 8 draw, because I'll then be talking about that draw when I go through each of the teams and what their prospects are looking like of making the finals. So for Round 8, we will have the Coatls going up against the Kodiaks, the Gladiators taking on the Harbours, the Drakes facing the Hammerers, the Knights going against the Enslavers, the Marauders taking on the Warrior Priests, the Fanatics and the Raiders, the Race going against the Revengers, and finally the Butchers going against the Scarabs in our final round of the competition. So let's look at those teams and talk about what they need to do in order to get through in this final round. Starting off with the Gladiators, which is of course Foehammer's team. They have one of their players was injured last game, Creanta, who also picked up Kick, is missing next game. But they also picked up a new player as well, who got blocked for free with a management role. Sitting now at a current team value of 1280, which is one of the highest ones in the competition. With the Gladiators currently sitting on 12 points, and the way the draw has worked out, I believe that there is no way they can fail to go through. So if they win, they go to 15 points. So only the Kodiaks and the Coatls, if they win, would be ahead of that. If they are on 13, the Kodiaks, the Coatls, if they win or draw, the winner of the Drakes and Hammerers, the Knights, if they somehow win by over 6 points, that's all that will get in front of them. Basically, as long as there's no more than 8 teams in front of you, you're guaranteed to go through, or no more than the possibility of that. And even if they stay on 12 points with a loss, I can only see the Kodiaks, Coatls, Harbours being ahead of that, the winner of the Drakes or Hammerers, the Knights if they win, or the Enslavers if they win by more than 6, the Warrior Priests if they win by more than 5, or the Marauders if they win by more than 8, and the Raiders if they win by more than 8. Like there are only 7 possibilities there to get ahead, so that would still leave them in 8th if all those things happened. So as far as I can see it tell, the Gladiators are going to be going through to the finals in some position or another. Then we've got the Coatls, who had their 2-1 win over the Enslavers this round. They picked up Block on Garlic Breath and also acquired a new blocker who came with Sure Hands, which may not seem great, but of course they did score in this last round with a Saurus blocker. So they're currently sitting on 13 points. Once again, no way they can't go through. If they win, they'll be at least equal to the Kodiaks, depending on what the goal difference is. Even if they draw, they're only going to be maximum of 3 teams ahead, and even if they only get 13, maximum of 4 teams ahead. So the Coatls will be through to the finals, come what may. Looking at the Death River Revengers, they had a 1-1 draw with the Fanatics, picked up Mighty Blow on a new blocker, and but they did lose a lineman to death in the process and picked up a new lineman. For these guys, there is no path through to the finals on their current points. They cannot get to the requisite level, so they are out, come what may. But obviously, there's still a chance to play one more game in the final round of the series. The End of All Air Kodiaks, which is the Nemesis team, currently leading on 16 points. So they had a 1-0 win over the Gladiators. Obviously, being in first place, there is no way they can't go through. If they win or they draw, they are the #1 team. If they lose to the Coatls, it really depends on what the goal difference is. The Coatls may jump ahead of them. But overall, no way they can't go through, and a good chance they will go through in first place. They did pick up Block on one of the Valkyries. No other major changes for the team, other than hitting the cap of 7 dedicated fans. Now, the Fungus Bay Fanatics, they had a 1-1 draw with the Revengers. They picked up Sidestep on their Doom Diver. At the bottom of the table, these guys have no path to go through. They are facing the Raiders, however, and the result of that game will be watched by a lot of players, because if the Raiders win that game, they might spoil a lot of people who are trying to get through on 9, 10, or 11 points. So although the Fanatics have no opportunity to get through, they may be a spoiler team, depending on how they result with the Raiders. The Hyoto Wan Harbors, which of course is Lawson's team, had a 1-all draw with the Drakes, putting them on 12 points currently. If they win or they draw, they're through to the final. If they lose, then I think that the Kodaks, Coatls, Gladiators will definitely be ahead of them. The winner of the Drakes or Hammerers would be ahead of them, or both if they draw. And then the winner of the Knights and Slavers, only if there's a winner. The winner of the Warrior Priests, Marauders, only if there's a winner, and only if there's a certain margin there. And the Raiders if they win by more than 3. So if there is a draw in Drakes Hammerers, the Knights win, the Warrior Priests win, the Raiders win by more than 3, the Harbours are out, if they lose, obviously. So, you know, there is always a possibility, but it does look pretty good for Lawson's team right now. But they are not quite locked in, depending on the results of some other matches. Moving on to the Iron Old Hammerers, which is Spoon's team. They had the 3-0 win over the Raiders, putting them on 11 points. A win in the final round against the Drakes would put them through quite handily. If they draw or they lose, then it's really going to come down to other matches. So if they draw, they need the Harbours to lose. They would prefer to have a draw in the Knights and Slavers, a draw in the Warrior Priests and Marauders, or at least a low-scoring game so that the teams behind them on goal difference can't get ahead. And they want the Raiders to lose. As long as any one of those things happens, then they'll be fine. If they lose, however, then they really need the Raiders to lose by any amount, and they need to be a definite winner in both the Knights and Slavers and the Warrior Priest Marauders, because if there's a draw near the game there, that could spoil it for them. So, sorry, they want to draw near those two games. If there's a definite winner in both those games and the Raiders win and the Hammerers lose the next round, they are out. So they want one of the draws in those games or the Raiders to lose. Or draw, obviously. Okay, going on to the Camry City Scarabs. They had a 2-1 loss to the Wraiths. Even though they're sitting on 7 points right now and could get to 10, by my working, even though there are still teams on 9, there is no result, including of possible draws or possible wins or losses, that sees the Scarabs get into the top 8. So, because they're already Kodaks, Coatls, Gladiators, Harbours, Drakes, Hammerers, Knights would all be ahead of them. Depending on, like, the Knights are on 10 right now. If they lost by a huge amount and the Scarabs won by a big amount, that might change that. But that's already 7 teams, and then the Warrior Priest Marauders match. Whoever wins would be the 8th team, or if they drew, it would be the Marauders. So yeah, there's really no way for the Scarabs to go through now. But they did have a good season. They were doing very well at the very start. Moving on to the Leichberg Knights, which is Lord Hunger's team. They had a 2-all draw with the Warrior Priests, putting them on 10 points. They are going up against the Enslavers. A win against the Enslavers guarantees them through. You know, they will have enough points that they can will not be stoppable. If they draw, they'll be on 11 points, in which case they either need the Warrior Priests and Marauders to draw, or they need the Raiders to win or to lose or draw, to go through if they draw. If they lose and they're only on 10 points, then by my workings, there will always be 8 teams ahead of them, because the Enslavers will move up, which means that you'll have the Kodaks, Coatls, Gladiators, Harbours, Drakes, Hammerers, Enslavers all ahead of the Knights, and then also the winner of the Warrior Priest Marauders match, or if there's a draw, they would still get ahead of the 10 points, just based on the goal difference of the Warrior Priests. So, yeah, the Knights, a win puts them through, a draw puts them at risk, a loss puts them out, basically. Moving on to the Lauren Forest Drakes, Wood Elf team, they had a 1-all draw against the Harbours, which is seeing one of their linemen out for the round. They're sitting on 11 points right now. If they win, they're through. If they draw, they're through. If they lose and are stuck at 11 points, then they need either a draw in the Knights and Slavers, a draw in the Warrior Priests Marauders, or the Raiders to lose. If they lose the next match, if none of those things happen, if no one of those things happens, they will be knocked out if they lose in the next round. Okay, the Northcote Marauders had a 2-1 win over the Butchers, putting them on 9 points. If they win in the final round, that puts them on 12 points, which is possible to go through, although they will need a few things to happen. So they would really want the Hammers and Drakes to have a result, because if there's a draw, then both of those teams go ahead of them. There's also, if there's a winner in the Knights and Slavers match, they'll go ahead of them, and also the Raiders, if they win, they'll go ahead of them. So they really need, a win, someone in the Drakes Hammers to win, doesn't matter who, and or a draw in the Knights and Slavers, and or the Raiders to lose or draw. Basically, that's the only way to go through. Marauders have to win and have one of those three things happen. If they draw and they're on 10 points, too many people ahead of them, and obviously on 9 points, they're out as well. So for Omar Creek's team, they must win and also have one of those three results I mentioned before happen as well. On to the Oversire Wraiths, who lost one of their runners to the draft, but managed to replace one straight away. In fact, she picked up Sneaky Git with that character as well. They had a 2-1 win over the Scarabs, putting them on 8 points. There is a path to the finals for the race. They first off, they have to win the next match. That's non-negotiable. And then they also need, I think, one of a draw between the Warrior Priests or the Marauders, or the Raiders to lose or draw. So they have to win, and then one of those things happens. They can still potentially make it to the finals. On a draw or a loss, they're out. Okay, the Scrayvold Butchers had a brutal match against the Marauders where they lost 2-1 and also had 2 players miss next game. There's no other way to cut this. The Butchers are out. They have no path to the finals, no matter whether they win or how much in the final round. They're out of the competition, but what a fun team they've been to play. On to the Slow Thicket Pant Raiders, the team which I never thought would be so pivotal to so many other teams in the final round. So they had their 3-0 loss to the Hammers, leaving them on 9 points. If they win, then they have a shot at the finals. That puts them on 12 points. They need the Drakes Hammers to have a result other than a draw, or they need to have a draw in the Knights and Slavers games, or a draw in the Warrior Priest Marauders game. And that's only if they win. If they draw or they lose, they're out. And there's a lot of teams that are really hoping that they will draw or lose, because a lot of teams only have a chance if one of multiple things happens, and one of those things is usually the Raiders losing or drawing their game. Then we've got the Warpstone and Slavers, which is AP's team, had a 2-1 loss to the Quaddles last round, so they're currently on 9 points. They don't have a guaranteed path to the playoffs, but either a win or a draw does still see them in contention. So if there's a win, then they want a result in the Drakes Hammers, not a draw. They would ideally like a draw in the Warrior Priest Marauders, and they would like the Raiders to win by less than 3, or draw or lose. Any of those 3 things happen. Actually, no, I think 2 of those 3 things have to happen. No, actually, no. If any of those 3 things happen, any one of them, and they win, the Enslavers will go through into the final. If they draw against the Knights, however, it gets a bit more contentious, because the Kodiaks, Coaddles, Gladiators, Harbours, Drakes, Hammers, and Knight will all be ahead of them, which means they would need actually, no, I think they would put them out, actually, because with the Warrior Priest Marauders, if they win, that person goes ahead, and if they draw, the Warrior Priests go ahead. So I think, actually, no, a draw would probably still put the Enslavers out. And then also, if the Raiders win, or the Wraiths win, or the Scarabs win by more than 4, any of those things would also spoil it if the Enslavers drew in the next round. So it really is a must-win for AP to stay in for the finals and in the final round. And obviously, if they lose at 9 points, they're definitely out. And then finally, we've got the V-Split Warrior Priest, who had a 2-all draw with the Knights, putting on 9 points. They likewise don't have a guaranteed path to the final. On a win, on a result of 12, then once again they need, a winner in the Drakes and the Hammerers, or a draw in the Knights and Slavers, or the Enslavers could win there, but it's got to be by a low margin. Or they need the Raiders to win by less than 3, or lose, or draw. If they win, they can go through. If they draw, then similar to the Enslavers, they could potentially get through, but they need the Raiders to lose, and they need, or maybe Knights and Slavers. Yeah, they might still spoil it too. You'd have Kodiaks, Quaddles, Gladiators, Harbours, Drakes, Hammerers. Yeah, okay, no. If the Raiders lose, regardless of the result in the Knights and Slavers games, the Warrior Priests could still go through, provided they at least drew and the Raiders lose. But if they lose on 9 points, they're out. So let's run through the teams. Let's look at the players quickly. So a few changes here on the leaderboards. First off, Triple H and the Kleist Eichwald both moved in front of the long since retired Oswald Klippel in the best conversions. For the highest scorers, Bo Jackson has jumped in front of Visera and Moss Burner. There's been no significant changes in Most Deadly, although Rain did pick up another casualty this round. For the most valuable, Bo Jackson has also moved up to equal Visera as most valuable in terms of total number of MVP votes, or total number of skills, basically. And Harak has now pushed Midi off the bottom of that list, as Midi's got no MVPs during this season. And then for the most expensive players, Bo Jackson has actually jumped all the way up to first place, now on 215k for that one player. And also Dawn Michaels has come onto the board, knocking off Not Tiny. So a few changes there on the leaderboard. Looking at the Fantasy Football League, so there's been a few changes here. Dynamis has clearly steamed ahead with a great result this round, putting on 80 points. Lawson is a solid 15 points behind, but, anything happened in the final round. Certainly, Dynamis did score 15 points in an earlier round. Big Spoon in third on 49. I think he jumped ahead of Lord Hunger, who's currently on 47. Fomer on 41, and then at the other end of the pack, Pondo the Mad and Omar Krieg did a quick swap. They were previously the other way around, but now Pondo the Mad sitting on 34 and Omar Krieg sitting on 32. A good 48 points off the lead. All right, so let me go back to the round 8 draw. We'll talk about the games briefly. So in terms of the tour play scores, so first off, Quaddles versus Kodiaks. The Quaddles have a tour play score of 7.9. The Kodiaks have a tour play score of 10.2. Big difference in those scores there. Not always that indicative. I mean, the Quaddles have had a consistently low score throughout the competition, mainly because one of the stats is dirty plays, which Pondo the Mad never does. So although, on paper, the Kodiaks look much, much stronger there, I think the Quaddles will still give them quite a run for their money. And it's interesting, like the two players, like Pondo is very much, I don't want to do anything too risky, and Dynamis is very much, I want to take the most risk I can. So it will probably depend upon, whether Dynamis takes bad plays or misjudges risks or just rolls poorly, or whether Pondo is able to decide to play some critical plays at critical times, which has sometimes worked out for him as well. He certainly had some wins where he's just gone, okay, I'm going to do this 3+3+4+3+ play, and he's gotten through and scored. So it very much will be a game of dice, I think, that game, and I really can't predict the leader right now, or the winner right now. Then we have the Gladiators versus the Harbours. Gladiators on 9.9, Harbours on 8.0. As much as I like High Elves, I do think that the Gladiators will probably just be the stronger team on the day, especially with like Carla Von Kill. I think that Lawson did a very interesting experiment with the Harbours this season, with starting off with no positionals and then bringing the positionals in bit by bit. But I think that just the skill load the Gladiators have will give them an edge over the Harbours. Could be wrong. There could be some early injuries. Certainly, Fohama has one player out in the form of Creanta, so he's got a slightly lower bench. But yeah, it's hard to say which way I go. But I think that really the Gladiators will will be the ones in front at the end of the day. But once again, for these two teams, not so important. They should probably still be through regardless. Then we've got the Drake's Hammerers. So they have played previously twice. So once in the first season where the Drakes beat the Hammerers, I think 2-0. And once in the second season where the Hammerers beat the Drakes 2-1. And look, Spoon has gotten really good with the Dwarves. He's been the one player that's been doggedly on the same team for the full 3 seasons, and so he really knows that team well. And he's got such a great player in the form of Bo Jackson. The Drakes will always have shenanigans. They'll always have 2+ dodges, even without a reroll as a tackle. But they will, they have the speed, they have the opportunity to sort of jump past, but we'll see whether Spoon can take them down. In terms of tool play scores, Drake's at 9.3, Hammers at 10.9. This one for me is too close to call. I want to go for the Drakes because they're sort of the team that I have had the most success with in this competition, but also want to see players do well. So we'll see how that game goes. Then we've got the Knights on 8.5 versus the Enslavers on 8.7. This is going to be, I think, a very fun game to watch because I think that both players are going to really role play up the antagonism between the two team managers. And they're always both a lot of fun to play with. I think in terms of the game itself, I think that Mike will try and get into Arthur's head. I think that Arthur will get into his own head. So that those things both working for Mike. I also think that Mike will roll poorly and then use re-rolls and still roll poorly because that's what he consistently does. So that will not play well for Mike. A tough call. I think that probably Mike, just from his experience in the game, has a bit of an edge there. But sometimes experience doesn't help you in the face of just constant bad dice rolls. And that is what Mike is known, or what Hunger is known for. So we'll see how that goes. Looking at the back half of the competition, so the Marauders and the Warrior Priest. Marauders on 9.7, the Warrior Priest on 9.3. I think that Omar has had some really great success with the Marauders recently, and I think that when I played him with the Butchers, I sort of discounted his Chaos Chosen, thinking that they were Agility 4+, but they're actually Agility 3+, and both of his scores in that last game against the Butchers were with Chaos Chosen. So, those Strength 4, Movement 5, Agility 3+ pieces are actually quite strong, and the Warrior Priests don't have a lot of counters other than the Ogre, and then the Ogre is still weaker again than a Charging Minotaur. So I think that the Warrior Priests are a very technically capable team. We could get some passes by the Marauders, for example. This could be quite a close game. I don't know which way to call that. All right, onto the Fanatics versus the Raiders. They are both a tool play score of 8.3. As I said, a lot of people need the Raiders to lose or to draw. I think that the Fanatics have been terrible this year or this season because I've been doing a lot of the plays with them, and I'm a terrible Goblin player. I apologize to people on YouTube who love Goblins and have not seen them well represented in this competition. They're very fun to play, but I think that I spend too much time having fun and not enough time being smart. And the Fanatics will suffer because of that, and they could suffer very well again. But both of these teams, Fanatics and Raiders, have both had times where just dice have turned on them. The fact that the Fanatics have lost 2 Doom Divers to very hungry trolls, where you basically got to roll a 1 and then a 1 again straight away, is just so unfortunate. So it could be a question of luck, or it could just be I'm just bad with Goblins, but we'll see. But I think I would favour the Raiders in that game particularly. Wraiths, Revengers. Wraiths on a score of 9.2, Revengers on a score of 8.3. Once again, I've had more luck with the Shambling Undead than with the Orcs. Orcs not a team I'm usually very comfortable playing. But sometimes we do well with the Orc Blitzers with Wurzog and Gughuk. I guess it's going to depend upon which side I end up doing the play of and how that one rolls out. I think that I'm not great with either team, nor is my assistant. yeah, that could just be a question of dice or whether some of us make bad decisions. I don't know which way it's going to go, but I also think that it's not a very important match. Although the race winning could spoil a couple of chances or could take away some opportunities for some other people further up the charts. And once again, the race do have a chance of getting through if a lot of other things fall over that are unlikely to. And then finally, the Butchers versus the Scarabs. The Butchers on 10.1, the Scarabs on 10.0. What I find is funny is that these two teams at the very bottom of this chart are two of the highest tool play rated teams with that particular score, mainly because of just things like the stats they do, the fouls they throw out, and yeah, the damage that the Scarabs have done in the past. I think particularly against the Kodiaks. Yeah, they have been both impressive teams despite the fact they've been losing so much. And for me, once again, both quite fun teams to play. Well, okay, the Butchers are definitely fun to play. The Scarabs, like 4+ to pick up the ball, can be pretty frustrating. I've had some games early on where the Scarabs just always managed to make the 4+, and that's how they got to be in first place in one of the earlier rounds. They became the boogeymen of this particular series, but now they are right down the bottom because they just couldn't make 4+ after those points there. So I think in this case, I'd probably favour the Butchers over the Scarabs here. The Scarabs, could get to a high enough score point that they create some difficulty for other teams, but I think overall, I like the Butchers in this match. So yeah, that's all the matches. Let me go back to so you can see me. Yeah, that is the summary of round 8. Time has gotten away from me. I'm traveling a lot more for work now. I just don't have the time to edit up the NPC matches like I did, so I'm just not going to be able to get those ones done. I would rather focus on getting through round 8, getting through the playoffs and finishing off this series so we can sort of then start the final series rather than holding up the games and these videos so that I can then go and make the backlog report for NPC teams. So I like to think about how I do this in the next season, about whether I try to go back to doing those games or we go back to doing summaries on the presentations. But overall, just want you to know that I won't get a chance to go back and do those ones. Just enjoy the videos that come out with each of the player teams, and hopefully that's enough for you as we move into the final round and, of course, into the playoffs for Season 3 of the Brew Bowl. Thanks for watching. We'll be back on YouTube soon with more videos from the Brew Bowl. Stay tuned. See you next time.